Welcome to Tell Me About It, a podcast by SLPs for everybody. My name is Francie.
And my name is Maggie.
And today, I don't know when when this episode will come out, but Happy New Year, everybody. Today we are talking about movies, and specifically Out of My Mind.
Yes. So we have noticed that there are a lot of there's I think more and more disability representation in movies and in media. And that is a double-edged sword, right? There's good examples of that and there's poor examples of that. Today we're going to talk about, I think, a pretty good example. And we're talking about the movie Out of My Mind, which is on Disney Plus. And anywhere else? I watched it on Disney Plus.
By association, I think it's on Hulu, just because they're kind of the same. But yeah, welcome to the Tell Me About It movie club. As we now talk about movies. No, this is a oh dang it with the ums again. This is a really great movie for representation, specifically about AAC and also mobility devices. I loved the representation that they had when it came to she uses a power chair for most of the movie. But anyways, really great use of assistive technology in this. And I think for people who don't have familiarity with disability that looks like the main characters, it's a really great introduction to what life is like, the struggles that are like, just that lived experience component.
Yeah, I was kind of left with a similar feeling that this was a really great, if you're not a person that's around disabled individuals or not a person with a disability yourself, this is a really good kind of introductory movie or piece of media that I think represents the disabled experience, at least for this person, really well. It is set in 2002, which I know this movie is based on a book. So when I saw it was set in 2002, I was like, that's kind of a weird time to set a movie, random. Is it based off of a true story? I don't think it is. I know it's based off of a book.
It's based off of a book. Actually, I have discussion questions for the book pulled up just to kind of review.
But I have my stream of consciousness notes that I took last night while I was watching. And that was one of my questions was is this a real? The Wikipedia page on this movie is pretty sparse, actually. There wasn't a whole lot of info.
Let's give it a quick goog.
Give it a goog.
According to the AI overview on Google, Out of My Mind is a fictional story but heavily inspired by real experiences, particularly the author's life as a mother to a daughter with cerebral palsy.
Okay.
And her work with disabled children. I don't know how true that is. But
yeah, AI overview, so
let's go to the author's website.
That guy's wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. In an interview that she did with Life Skills to Learn, she talks about how this is great, actually. What inspired you to write the book Out of My Mind? The simple answer to your question is I wrote the book because it needed to be written. Those kids like Melody need a voice. It's amazing how many people with a whole array of disabilities have written to me because the book called attention to their particular plight. They simply thanked me for letting the world see them as real people. I do have a daughter with a disability, but she is not Melody, not even close. She tells me all the time to make sure that people don't think that she is Melody. She thinks it's funny and loves the attention it brings her. Bringing up a child with special needs gives one a huge insight into the world of special ed. And don't even get me started on the cruelty that systems like Common Core have inflicted on those kids. Preach, girl.
Yeah.
Preach, girl. So.
Wait, Common Core as in the curriculum thing?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. When you think about standards-based.
Standards-based. Okay,
standardized. And Common Core, of the 90s and 2000s. That was very much no child left behind situation.
For sure. Got it.
So anyways.
Yeah. So in my mind, so we've talked kind of a little bit about the overview premise of the movie. So it's not based on a true story, but the author used real world experiences to kind of draw from.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, overall, I do think this was a really good representation. There were a few moments when I wish it had kind of gone a little deeper, perhaps, but I understand why it didn't, because this is a movie for kids. It's geared towards
Mm-hmm.
kids that are like the same age as the protagonist, so like 11, 12. And it also is just a movie. Like it only had 2 hours to tell this story, and yeah, so it couldn't give you like a college level course on disability theory and and
Right.
disability rights. So for the movie and for the target audience, I thought it was really good. Like
I agree
I
with that.
would want fifth graders, middle schoolers to watch this movie.
Absolutely.
Just like how I know a fifth grade teacher I worked with in the past had her students read Wonder every year,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a unit on that, which Wonder is also a pretty good representation, I think, of disability in a different way than Out
Yes.
of My Mind is. But
Yes. I would be so interested to see this. Now makes me want to read the book to see the
mhm.
differences between what was highlighted in the movie and what was not, or what was left out for the sake of time, or what was missed because you can't portray things in writing like you can, or you can't portray things in video like you can in writing. So now I'm
Mhm.
really like, oh, maybe I should read the book. I'm reading some of the discussion questions. I'm like, dang,
Dang.
love, right? Oh,
Yeah.
one of the discussion questions is, what is significant about the story of Ollie the fish? How does Ollie's life mirror Melody's? Describe Melody's feelings when she's unable to tell her mother what really happened to the
Oh,
fish.
okay. I will say, oh, also, this episode's going to contain spoilers for Out of My Mind.
Yes, if you have not watched it, what are you doing?
Go
First of
watch it
all,
and
second
then
of
come
all,
back and
come
listen to
back.
this. Yeah, so Ollie is the fish, and in the very first scene, it shows Melody sitting in her chair by the window, um, watching Ollie swim around in his fish tank, kind of while a lot of like chaos is happening in the background behind her. So like mom and dad are getting her little sister ready for school. Little sister is like hiding, trying to avoid mom, trying to avoid going to school. Friends is playing on a television off to the side, and so Melody is just kind of there, and a lot of things are happening around her, which I thought was a really good depiction of especially kids with like mobility needs, that they sometimes just get put in one place and stuff happens around them. So
I agree with that. I think oftentimes people think that is what inclusion is.
mm,
Things happening around an individual who has barriers to the world around them. And that's not
yeah,
it.
one thing that I wrote down, like one of the notes I took, and something that I have said from my time working in the schools, is that inclusion without consideration and modification is worthless. Like it is completely useless. And that was a big point of this movie too. Later on, Melody does get included in a mainstream classroom, but they don't like make a space
Accommodate.
for her. Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
accommodate. And she is just kind of there more or less as a spectator, which I don't think is real inclusion, and frankly is pretty worthless overall. So yeah, but I gasped when the fish jumped out of the tank.
Right.
There were so many moments where because for most of this movie, she doesn't have a speech generating device. She has a core board and a keyboard.
Like a low tech keyboard, like a spelling.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
letter board, like an
Letterboard.
alphabet
Thank
board
you.
on her on a tray in front of her, like mounted on her power chair. And so she can touch different icons on on the core board, or she can spell out words on the letter board, but it doesn't make any noise. So unless someone is standing right in front of her and knows that she's trying to communicate, she can't communicate. So when Ollie, the fish, jumps out of the tank and falls on the floor, her dad and mom are outside putting her sister in the car. And so she's in there, and like you see her struggling trying to get people's attention, but she can't move because she can't get out of the house. I think they have to put a ramp up to get her in and out of the house. And she doesn't have any kind of device, like she can't yell, And so, oh my gosh, that just like, it was really effective in giving that feeling in your chest of like, almost like when you're in a dream and you're trying to scream, but you can't scream,
Mm-hmm.
And showing that like, this is this kid's life, was really powerful, I thought. So
I think it's really powerful. I also think the comparison of a fish tank to her access to the world around her is a powerful comparison too, because she can only go as far as things are publicly accessible. I think there's a scene at the museum. There's like an inaccessible, like
when they're like
public
rushing
location.
around,
Yes,
that was
like
the airport.
That's what
the elevator was broken.
The elevator. Thank you. There was, inaccessible public locations. You can only go as far as your environment allows you to, and that's so deeply unfair.
100%. Yeah. So I thought they did a really good job of portraying that piece. She also says one of her first lines is like, I see a lot of people's butts because I'm in a power chair. Yeah. So just like the level, just eye level that she's at. And also the fact that most of the time people like aren't addressing her. They're not talking to her. They're talking about her in front of her, which also is pretty true to life from people in similar situations that I have talked to too. The scene when she rolls up to the school with her dad and she goes, "This is my school, not here. We're in the trailer over here." I was like, oh, that's so real.
So real.
So real. To put them in just like the whole sped department is in like a crummy little trailer.
In a double wide. Yeah. A double wide behind the school. Yeah.
It is so common for special education classrooms to be kind of sequestered like that, even if the kids are included in mainstream classrooms for like part of the day or even most of the day. Special education is so often an afterthought.
Sometimes it's not even an afterthought. It's a totally separate vein of thinking. Like it's not even included when you are thinking about things as like it's not even an afterthought. I think about sometimes too how even when classrooms for special education are centrally located or more accessible within the school, people complain about them. Other teachers complain about them constantly. Constantly. That's icky, guys. Did you know that?
Yeah. And when I think back to my own experiences in public school, I don't remember seeing special ed classrooms. Like they were so kind of cordoned off and not, I do remember having some students in class with me that had maybe a para with them or that I knew had a disability of some kind. But I can only remember a few times actually seeing, especially kids that had pretty severe needs or like pretty intense motor support needs like Melody. I can only remember a handful of times even seeing them. And as a teenager, I that didn't even cross my mind, didn't think about it. But now as an adult, especially like in this field, looking back, I'm like, wow, what a shame that
What a shame. Yeah. What a shame. Because there's such, I find that inclusion works both ways. Not only is it good for the student with disability, it's good for everybody else around them. It teaches their same age peers so much about the lived experiences of others. And that disability is not something to fear, right? When you can engage in play with somebody who is different than you are, it teaches kids so much about the world around them and that they're not so different after all.
Yeah.
So important. So important.
Something that I feel like I have seen as an adult working with disabled kids in schools is that, when the other kid from her class that was put in the mainstream classroom as part of this program made fun of her. So it was the other disabled student making fun of Melody. I was like, that's so real.
That's so real.
We saw all the time.
I've had to have, oh man.
They were making fun of each other. And I was like, you gotta stop. You
I've
can't
had
make
to
fun of
have
anybody, but you need to
no,
stop making fun of the fellow kids in your
in
class
your
with a
class,
disability
right?
for their
I've had to
disability.
I've had to have so many more not necessarily like sensitivity conversations, but just conversations about like, "Hey, quit being a jerk, guys."
Mhm.
To kids with disabilities about kids with disabilities. And so it's I that was from a teacher's perspective or from an SLP's perspective, I was like, "Yep."
That was so real. That was so true to life. And the reason for that is that disabled children are also children and
Yeah.
they tease each other and they say mean things and they
But
say things that they shouldn't.
they're kids.
Yeah, sometimes
Surprise.
they are absolute little stinkers and they do things that they shouldn't do. So that was a good example of that as well, I thought. Another thing that I thought was really interesting that the movie didn't spend a lot of time on was the absolute disrespect for Dr. Ray, how they
Oh,
kept calling her a student and saying like, "Oh, there's a student here to." She was doing postdoc
she
work
she
in
was
the
a,
school.
like a PhD student,
Yes.
if I remember
No,
correctly.
no, she fully was a doctor. She
Oh,
had a
this is
PhD.
postdoc.
Yes. And
Okay.
they kept calling her a student. They kept calling her Miss Ray. And
Yeah.
I wrote in my notes in all caps, it's Dr. Ray because there was just so much disrespect. And in the movie, Dr. Ray is played by a Black woman. And so
Mhm.
I felt like that was good representation of how that's
Absolutely.
even more compounded of
Yeah.
women in education are usually not given the respect that their titles deserve, and even more so Black women
Absolutely.
who have higher
Absolutely.
education degrees. So
Mhm.
it's Dr.
Absolutely.
Ray.
Say it with your chest. Oh my gosh, I agree with that. That's one of the things, I mean, even we can cut this as well. Even with the changing of titling right now in government from removing SLP, OT, PT, and other fields like ours from the professional degree category, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
another slight, against women who are professionals. Say it, Dr. Ray. Come on now.
Mhm.
So anyways, too
Yeah,
real.
and that's something that sorry, I have 1,000 beverages right now. I have my coffee, my smoothie, and my
Yeah.
water.
One for no, say it with me now. One for caffeination, one for hydration, one for fun.
True. One for caffeination, one for hydration, one for breakfast right now.
There we
But
go.
um, yeah, so no, but with what you're saying about the and this kind of touches on one of my very slight issues with the movie, which again, overall, I think it did a really great job portraying a very complex topic in a way that is friendly for kids, but and for adults too.
True.
But one of the things that I wanted to touch on was along with like SLPs, OTs, PTs being removed from the professional occupations kind of designation for the government. And that the only thing that really does is prevents few students going into those fields from getting the maximum amount of student loans that they could from the government, which if you are not familiar, student federal student loans are way better than private
Yes.
student loans. They have much lower interest rates. There's grace periods, there's income-based
Repayment options.
repayment
Yeah.
options, all kinds of things. And when you have a lot of professionals like SLPs, OTs, PTs who work in the public schools and have to take out, sometimes close to $100,000 in student
Yep.
loans to get their degree and then come out of school making $40K a year, income-based loan repayment is essential. And making sure and having most of those loans be federal student loans with lower interest rates is overall better and more
Yeah.
beneficial. um, so that's the big problem with that. But it is also like I've seen some SLPs be like, guys, we don't need to focus on this. Like, it's just a title thing. This is a vanity, blah, blah,
It
blah.
sure, I think about that, but then when I think about what it means, I would have been $10,000 short to cover my master's. Where would I have gotten that money?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And yes, the money part, but also I think about like we are already a pink collar field.
Yes.
And by that I mean we are,
Taken less seriously than the other STEM fields.
yes. Yeah, the fact that like I'll say I'm in a STEM field, I am a woman in STEM, and have that be like, oh, really? Are we? Yes,
Yes.
we are scientists. Like this is a
Hey
medical and
guys,
health professional field.
communication sciences and disorders.
Yeah, or like even speech language pathologists, like
Pathologist.
that is a science field. Um, but because it isn't engineering, it isn't medicine, it isn't, even nursing to a degree, it's not taken as seriously. And I think in these fields dominated by women, we do encounter a lot of the kind of social implications of that, where we're just not taken as seriously as professionals. People portray us to be, I don't know, just a little bit silly sometimes, or less important, less learned, less educated than maybe a, a male in a similar field. So, yeah, didn't
Shout
love
out to
that.
Dr. Ray. Shout
Yeah,
out to
put some
Dr. Ray.
respect on Dr. Ray's name, 100%. And yeah. Okay, yes. I feel like my mind is
Back
going all over the place on this movie. Back to the plot. Back to what you were saying about how inclusion helps everybody. I think that people need to be taught how to be uncomfortable. We
Oh,
don't,
big
yeah,
time.
like
Preach on it, Maggie. Take me to
we
church.
don't,
Go, go, go.
we don't like to be uncomfortable. We don't like to feel awkward or embarrassed. And when you are faced with a situation where you don't know how to act or react, those feelings come up. So for kids, a lot of times what I have noticed is that they will try their best, right? They'll try to be kind and inviting like Rose was in the movie, but then they'll kind of shut down and avoid. And I think that adults do much of the same type of thing, where they'll kind of give it their best try and then they ignore the thing that's making them feel uncomfortable. And so because we have such limited experience with most people have such limited experience with people with severe disabilities, that makes them really uncomfortable. And so the instinct is to ignore and separate. So, what I think this movie did a really good job of, I want to talk about her line at the very end, but this is skipping way ahead. At the very end of the movie, Melody is basically saying, if I make you uncomfortable, that's a you problem. And I was like, yeah, that was my absolute favorite part. Her monologue at the end was my favorite part of the movie.
Yes.
Because, yeah, it is. So if you are made uncomfortable by a person with a disability, that is a you problem.
You problem.
That's not on the person with the disability to make you feel better. That is on you to look inward and think, why am I made uncomfortable by this? Is it just lack? Is it just lack of exposure? Am I just uncertain? Do I just feel socially awkward? Or am I afraid of something that I don't know?
Yeah.
And so it's, especially as adults, the burden is on us to get over it.
Yep.
And to learn more about disability, learn more about people's specific needs, and make changes on our own so that disabled people can be included.
Truly. Truly. And as stewards of communication, I feel the need to also put in there that communication is inherently messy. So you're gonna mess it up several times. Just gonna warn you. So don't be discouraged when you're trying to go down this journey of inclusivity and you mess it up several times. So the main part is to keep trying and keep changing your approaches to find one that is successful. Great example. Melody gets baby talked or like baby clapped, something. I watched
Someone
this movie
pats her on the head.
That's what it is. I was
Yeah.
like something very pedantic and like reminiscent of a very small child, not Melody's age. Don't do that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think that one of the big things that this movie brought up for me is just that a lot of people really do not, and I think this might ruffle some feathers if interpreted the wrong way, but I think a lot of people really don't see disabled people as people. And that is like even well-meaning people, even
Yeah.
well-meaning, even people that work in special education,
Yes.
um, just don't see disabled people as people and don't treat them how they would treat
Don't
a
treat them.
non-disabled kid.
I agree with that. I agree with that entirely, which is wrong, by the way. We are saying that's
Yeah,
not a good thing.
you shouldn't do
Goes
that.
without saying, but
And I think it
I
goes, especially kids with complex communication needs. We talked about this in my grad program. I think kids that are late talkers or have a language disorder when they're infants and toddlers get talked to less
yeah,
because they're not responding back, because that's a natural, as a human, if you talk to somebody and they don't respond back to you, you're going to stop talking to them. That's like a natural human instinct. It's not that it's inherently wrong, but that's when the burden is on us to understand, how does this person communicate? Are they understanding? How can I modify my communication so that they keep getting language and so that they are keep having opportunities to give language back?
snaps for that, Maggie. I agree with that.
Okay, in this movie, about halfway through, she gets a speech generating AAC device. And they talked about how it cost $17,000 out of pocket. This movie set in 2002. I think that's still kind of about what they cost, if not more. So now she got this early thing called a meta talker, which I don't think is a
Right.
real
I was actually, let me
AAC.
Google that.
I think it's a fake brand that they made up for the movie, would be my guess.
It is a fictional name.
Okay, yeah. Because I was just thinking like legally you would have to get the rights to use the name and blah blah blah. I was like, they probably just made one up. But it looks very much like talkers and speech generating devices that you and I are really familiar with. So, and we also know that nowadays a dedicated device with a speech generating AAC software on it, especially one that needs to be mounted to a power chair, can run easily 17 grand. If you need eye gaze or other access methods, you're looking at well above $25,000 out of pocket.
Mhm.
Is insurance going to cover that? They sure don't want to. They do
They
not
make it
want
an
to.
effort to not. And they say, this is durable medical equipment. You only get one every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. One every 5 to 10 years. I thought of that when at the end of the movie, Melody spills a milkshake
Mm.
on the talker. And I was just like, oh, it's going to be a headache with insurance.
This gives me great this is my SLP advice for the day, because that scene did give me great anxiety. Sometimes, folks, you can find low-tech versions of AAC systems online. I know LAMP has them, and I know TouchChat has them. So if you ever have a student whose high-tech device is gone for milkshake-related reasons or
Mhm.
otherwise, you can find backup low-tech versions of the same software, usually online in PDF form. Good looking out,
Yes.
folks.
But
However,
that puts us back.
oh,
That would put Melody back where she was at the
yes,
beginning of the
it's
movie.
cumbersome. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she can't get anybody's attention. Someone
Yeah.
has to be there looking at her to see that she's
Yes.
pointing to things.
Mhm.
So, yeah, speech generating devices, low tech AAC is great as a starting point. It's great in emergencies, but I think another thing this movie did really well was highlighting the importance of a speech generating device.
Yes. No, there are great importances of speech generating devices because of the noise that it makes. It's so valuable for communication to be able to
Mhm.
have something that you can control and turn up and turn down and get loud to get people's attention for that
There's
reason.
a there's a point in the movie where the adults in Melody's life are arguing, and she uses her device to say stop, and it gets all of their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And like usually she would have maybe pointed to it on her core board or something,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't. They were too busy arguing with each other. They wouldn't have paid attention to her. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it really, again, just highlights the importance of being able to interrupt, like the communicative function of interrupting.
I love communicative functions because we do so much more than request and protest. An interruption, great example.
Mm-hmm. There was another scene where the uh, the doctor that she was working with, Dr. Ray, was helping her add like slang and things that kids actually say to her device. And I know you and I have both had moments where we've gone into a page set and added something dumb because the kid wanted to say it.
Yep. You best believe I'm out here adding 6-7 to 8. Anyways.
As you well should.
As I well should. So anyways, total tangent. Not really. It's related to the movie. The scene where in the process for getting approved for a device, they did a language assessment. And they gave an array of, I think they were all the same color items. And the questions were not very good insofar that of the items that they were selecting, it was like, oh, this is what it was. There's 5 items, 4 of which are red, 1 of which are yellow. And the prompt was, which one is different? However, the actual items themselves, all of them were animals or something like that, and one of them was not an animal, or vice versa.
All of them were things you could eat. It was like a tomato, cherries, strawberries, apple, and then a banana. But there was a red balloon included with the set as well.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like this was a great example as to why standardized tests have their limitations when we are talking about students with complex communication needs. We don't know. We can't see inside their heads to help understand the reasoning. The movie did a great job at being like, well, obviously you can't eat a balloon. That's the one that's different. The target answer was actually the bananas because they were yellow. We can't assess that because we can't see in their brain, which is why sometimes these standardized assessments are not the best for students with complex communication needs. Felt like that was a really important moment in the movie. And as an SLP, I was like, yes, that.
Yes. Okay. That definitely brings me to some of the things that not that I disliked about the movie, because I think that it presented so many real world parts of special education and health and communication and all of that. But there were several moments where I was like, oh, but the reason why we have to do that is like, it didn't, I guess, like,
go into the background. Yeah, it didn't go into the background as to why things are the way they are, just that they are this way.
You know that I'm a big advocate for standardized testing.
You love standardized testing. And
I do.
I like standardized testing for students for whom it is appropriate.
Same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that it's appropriate for everyone. And I absolutely see the concerns. And I think that they are valid. I will say, though, I believe that, again, kind of going back to that bell curve, most students are going to be a good fit for standardized testing. They're going to be able to sit for it. They will be able to take it, and you're going to be able to get a reliable score. Our friends with complex bodies, complex motor needs, complex communication, that kind of fall on the higher end of that bell curve, or maybe what we would call outliers, are not going to be good fits for standardized testing. But again, they're outliers. Yes. And so when you're us and you pretty much your whole entire caseload is outliers, it does become tricky, because insurance and schools demand a standardized score.
Yes.
So for most people, that's not a problem, right? But then it's the kids like Melody, or the kids that, you know, both you and I have worked with. So I don't think, I'm not in the camp of we need to do away with all standardized testing. but I do firmly believe that it's not appropriate for every student. And someone like Melody, I would probably not give a standardized test to, especially if I was unfamiliar with her. Like if she just came into my practice and I didn't know her at all, I would do a more of a dynamic kind of assessment.
Which, that was going to be my next thing. I think we might have talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it. I can't remember. As soon as we finish recording these, my brain wipes all memory of what we've talked about. We might have talked about it in our testing episode. However, there are alternatives to standardized testing that I find to be very valuable and give me more information than a standardized test would when we're talking about this specific profile of child, like Melody. Dynamic assessment is so valuable because it allows you to see what they're doing, what they're actually doing, as opposed to performing on a certain set of questions. And that, to me, when it comes to AAC, is so much more important because I want to know if you're actually going to use the device.
And can you describe, just like for anybody listening, kind of what a dynamic assessment would look like for you? What would you do?
I do a lot of like interest-based work. So great example, if I am trying to see if a device is going to be a good match for a child, I'm going to pick a game that I know they love or an activity that I know they love and start introducing AAC into that activity and see if they take to the device to help support what they're interested in. This could be like bubbles and a more or describing task. This could also be for a student who sorry, I just lost my entire train of thought. I have for a student who's very interested or has very niche special interests, it might be using the device to talk about those special interests or like support conversation about whatever it is that they are passionate about. And that allows me to look at, are they using, if I'm looking for a new device, I'm going to introduce a couple different ones. This is something that takes a long time for me personally, because I want to see, is this system working for them? Is their physical access needs being used while we're having these very naturalistic situations? I'm going to look at, can you navigate the device? Is it too heavy for you in these very organic situations? If that makes sense. I feel like that made no darn sense whatsoever. They're dynamic for a reason. I'm changing my responses to what the child is showing me with AAC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to comment that to like affirm what you were saying. But yeah, the dynamic means it changes as you go. And you're using a lot of professional judgment to make those changes. They're not just random. So with the standardized test, the idea is that anyone who's qualified to give the test could give it and get the same score. Basically, they're the same, they're static. You can't make adjustments based on what the child needs because that's okay. You can't make adjustments based on what the child needs because that's not how the test was developed. But yeah, dynamic testing, we make changes based on what we're seeing the child produce. So the problem is, though, insurance doesn't like that. Schools don't like that, like to qualify kids for special education.
Oh, for qualify for special education, no. However, I had great luck with dynamic assessment and Medicaid right now. So that's exciting.
That is good to know, actually. That's great. Because
you can also find dynamic checklists. The DAG 3 by Toby Dynavox is a great checklist of skills to talk about where a student is at and based off what you're seeing. There is no standardized portion of that. That is a set of what are we looking for skills that cover a bunch of different areas that helps to kind of quantify where a student is at in their AAC progress, in their AAC journey, which also sometimes really helps. And schools can use that in REDS. Fun fact.
Yeah. Nice. It's okay. Buddy's being a guard dog. Well, and this actually, something that kind of came to mind while I was watching this movie, we have talked about spelling to communicate before on this podcast. We did a whole episode about it almost a year ago now, which is kind of crazy, but it has not died down since we did that episode. It has only grown in fervor and popularity. And there are a few things that the spelling to communicate crowd, so like supporters and usually parents of people who use it, promote. One of those things is the phrase presuming competence, which did make an appearance in this movie. Dr. Ray says it at one point, and then during another part or throughout the movie, Melody uses a letterboard mounted to her chair, which is an argument that's brought up a lot during conversations about S2C. Like, well, why couldn't you just mount it to a static thing if they have complex motor needs? So, Francie, do you want to talk about kind of those two things? And this is not a dig at S2C particularly, because like we don't have time to get into that today, but not that I don't want to dig at S2C. No. But we just don't have time. But do we want to talk about those two things, the presuming competence and then access with complex motor needs? So having something mounted and static as opposed to another person holding it.
Yeah, absolutely. When a letterboard, AAC device, whatever, is static, if you are somebody who has motor needs that make you a little unstable, or you have motor planning deficits that makes it hard to have your arm kind of free moving and hitting moving targets, it's oftentimes more supportive to have something static that you can rest your hand on to help give you stability, and then move your hand or move your fingers accordingly, or move a stylus accordingly. When you have that support, sometimes it helps to alleviate the musculature to help allow for communication to come through. And so when we see something mounted like that for Melody, who is a student with cerebral palsy, that makes sense in my brain as to why something like that would be close to her on a chair, so that if she did have some type of upper mobility issue, she could keep her hands down low. I think the devices ended up being in front of her, so she would have to reach through, but she had a tray that she could rest her elbow on.
She
that
did,
would make sense. It would make sense to help support her body's needs as she communicates, because it's giving her the support that she needs to be able to use her hand without having to rely on her shoulders and other muscles of the arm. Like I said, I'm an SLP. This is why we consult with OT and PT when we do
This is why
AAC
we love
things.
our OT friends.
This is why we love our OT and PT friends, is because they help us to find communication pathways when motor is a concern. And so that is why, in the realm of S2C, why it doesn't make sense in my brain as to how a target that is moving. It's harder to move hold on. It is harder to hit a moving target, which is why we often say in conversational speech, that's a moving target, because it's hard to hit. And so when there's a letterboard, but somebody else is moving it around, it's hard. It's hard to hit if you have motor planning deficits. And so something static helps them to take away that part of having to track things dynamically, and instead rest an arm, rest a wrist, and be able to execute whatever they're trying to say without having to compensate for the movement of something that is not fixed, if that makes sense.
I even thought about this the other night. Me and my husband went out for drinks on New Year's Eve, and he was holding up, they had like a specialty menu for that night, and he was holding it up for me to see, like showing it to me.
It's hard
and
to read.
I had to, like, it was kind of dim in the place that we were. I had to be like, okay, thank you, hang on, and like get my own menu and hold it still so I could read it, because I was like, it's dim in here. It's loud, people are talking, your hand is moving ever so slightly, I can't read what you're showing me. I need to get my own version of it, which maybe that means that I'm getting old, but whatever. I was just thinking of that, like, how hard would it be if that was your only way to access communication?
Well, I even think about it to a lesser extent. There's something like partner assisted scanning. It is the responsibility of the person holding the book to be as still as possible, or as close to the other person, the communicator, as possible, to allow them to not have to work so hard and move their head around and move their eyes around to be able to track whatever they're trying to say, right?
Yeah, which is why it's good to be sitting at a table, or to have, like, if you're sitting and you can rest your elbows on your knees or your thighs and hold it so that you're kind of braced. Those are good ways to kind of get around that when you're doing something like partner assisted scanning, or if you're out in the wild with an AAC device that's not mounted to something.
And why, when we think about softwares that are meant to alleviate motor planning or meant to support motor planning, something like LAMP, why all the icons, one, are so tiny and close together, and two, why they don't move. That's so, so, so important that whatever it is that we're going for is static and not someplace else every time, because that gets harder for us to execute where we're trying to move our hands to when we're direct accessing icons, right? So,
Yeah, 100%.
there's my 2 cents on that. But
Yeah,
anyways.
so that was something I thought of because it definitely was a part of this movie, her access needs. The other thing, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about Melody spelling,
Mhm.
and one of the most important things of that is somebody taught that child literacy and somebody did good there. Our non-speaking children are so capable of reading and spelling. They just have to be taught, and they need
Yep.
really good quality instruction in literacy to be able to get there, and it is such a vital skill. So I was really excited to see her literacy skills being put on display at the beginning of the movie with her letterboard and so on, because she's capable. Oh, right. We were going presumed competence. Sorry. We're
Yeah,
looping back
no,
around to
you're
that
fine.
now.
I'm glad you brought that up because I did take a note when she got the AAC device. It didn't really show any kind of like training portion at all or like therapy with the device to learn how to use it. And part of that is because it's a movie and it's only 2 hours long. The other part of that is that Melody could read. Melody could
Yeah.
already read. So you
Yeah.
or I, when we are handed a new device that we're unfamiliar with, it's pretty easy for us to navigate it because we're literate. When you give an AAC device that is text-based to a child who can't read or has very minimal or very laborious reading ability, it's not automatic. Like they can't just navigate it easily because it's text-based and they can't read. So that was something that um I liked and I was happy for. It's a lot easier to use AAC when you are literate.
Yes. However, and though Melody was literate, one of my favorite aspects of the movie was they had like the flashing AAC symbols when she was making sentences. And I
Yes.
thought that was such a special way of demonstrating the process for which some of our students who maybe aren't at the point of literacy and still heavily rely on icons to communicate, what that would look like in their brain to be able to create their message. I thought that was a really fun aspect of the movie.
Yeah, I really liked that too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I loved that. And it made me think of how you kind of get a unique syntax with, and by that I mean like sentence structure with AAC, where, yeah, you can type out an entire sentence on an AAC device. Usually that's not the most efficient way to communicate your message. And you saw that in the movie too. Sometimes Melody just said like, stop, don't want, stop, or something, instead of saying, stop, I don't want that, please don't, like adding all these little words, she just kind of gets the content words there. That's really common. And as we saw in the movie, especially for someone like Melody with cerebral palsy, where maybe their language isn't impacted at all, it's their motor speech mechanism. So they have the language understanding and are able to comprehend typically developing syntax like you and I are using now. You kind of get this second language of syntax almost.
Well, going back to motor planning, it's going to be more laborious for her body to have to go and find all of our little filler words. People who use verbal speech are oftentimes superfluous with their words. We use so many extra words all the darn time. So when you have a body that would fatigue trying to find all of those little words, you're going to find the most efficient pathway out. And that's oftentimes a more content-based sentence structure. And that's okay. That's a good thing, by the way. Not opposed to that.
Yeah, 100%. I thought that was really powerful, like, because it would be in those really heightened moments that we were seeing the flashes of the core words, and it was content words. So that was really cool. I just liked that from a
From an
speech
SLP
nerd.
standpoint.
Let's talk about presumed competence
Right.
real quick. So
Yes.
this is something that you and I have been having a lot of conversations off mic about recently.
Yes.
Because it is, and I'm pulling up an Instagram post. that I thought did a really cool or a really good explanation of it recently. So on my business account, I posted something like a month and a half ago about presuming competence and what I don't like about that phrase. Personally, I don't use the phrase presuming competence because I believe that it has taken on a meaning that, or it has the potential to mean something that I think is different from the intended meaning. And especially when we're talking about vulnerable populations like people with disabilities, we have to be really intentional with our words. We have to be careful what we say, because even if we mean one thing, people who don't know as much about disability might misinterpret what we mean. And, that miscommunication can cause a lot of problems for the people that we are ultimately trying to serve. So I posted something about presuming competence that was based off of a post I had seen from an account called Language Processing. They're language_processing on Instagram. And they talked about how they didn't like the phrase presuming competence because both the word presume and the word competence have common meanings that are not the same as the intended meaning of the phrase presume competence. So the common meaning of presume is to assume something without evidence. So I presume that, well, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to think of a good example. Whatever. It's to assume something without evidence. Oh, here's an example. If it's around noon, I would presume that you're getting hungry, even though you haven't told me that you're hungry, but I know that it's around lunchtime, so I'm assuming that. Competence is the ability to complete a task with an implied degree of independence. So that is not part of the literal definition of competence, but when we think about things that are like if you have a quarterly competency meeting with your boss, that there is this implied level of independence. So
or proficiency. That's
or
the or
proficiency.
proficiency.
Yeah. Which is, so it's kind of this like mastery, independence, proficiency type word. So when you put those two common definitions together, what you're left with is assume that disabled people can do stuff without any evidence to, like, just assume that they already have skills, even if they haven't been taught, or if you have no evidence to suggest that they would be able to. I think that leaves the door open for people with disabilities to be put in situations that they are not equipped for and not given proper support. So that's the thing where, like, Melody in the movie needs support in certain areas of her life. She does, before her speech generating device, she needs support to communicate. Somebody has to be looking at her and reading where she's pointing on the board. She has motor needs. So if we just presume competence for Melody and just say, like, oh, well, she's 12, so I presume that she can do whatever a 12-year-old can do, and you just let her go, then she is going to be set up for failure and even injury or harm because she's not being given the support that we needed because we assume she didn't need that support. So that's kind of my issue with it, because those two words have those common meanings. What I know is that that's not the idiomatic meaning that presume competence has taken on. What it means when you say it as a phrase is to assume that a disabled person has the capacity for something, that they are. So when Dr. Ray says to Mr. Dimmings, the teacher in the movie, presume competence for Melody, what she's saying is, don't judge a book by its cover. Assume that Melody is able to participate in class. Assume that she's intelligent enough to keep up with the curriculum. You're saying these things that it's kind of like, give her a chance, and don't limit your expectations of Melody just based on what she looks like or your preconceived notions of her. So I don't know. That's kind of a sticky phrase for me because of those reasons.
I agree with you. I have a lot of, obviously we've talked about it. We have a lot of conflicted feelings about it because we're coming from the professional point of view and not a parental point of view or even a personal point of view, being the individual with a disability. From the professional standpoint, I sometimes worry that the phrase presumed competence gives leeway for bad actors within the field of special education to get out of actually teaching and being held accountable for the teaching of a student with disabilities. That's my big with it, is that I don't want people or students with disabilities to not be given high quality education because we're presuming that they can already do it, because people will use it as an out. And I hate that.
If you're listening to Francie thinking that won't happen, that's ridiculous, Spelling to Communicate already does that. Yeah. So it is not a literacy program. They do not teach spelling. They do not teach literacy. They presume
the phonics patterns. Yeah, they presume that they
presume that the student can already read, despite no evidence to that.
Or even, unfortunately, I'm very passionate about special education. I care very deeply about it. However, sometimes it attracts the wrong type of person, and that person does not have the best interest for kids. And when they latch onto a phrase like presumed competence in the guise of being so virtuous, they're really doing a disservice to their children because they're not being held accountable for actually teaching the kids what they need to know. And it makes me sound very jaded and pessimistic. However, I've watched it happen. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I sometimes recoil from that phrase because I want what's best for kids, and I want kids to be given what they are owed when it comes to education. And I fear people misconstruing that phrase for personal laziness, if that makes sense. Professionals using that phrase for personal laziness. Yeah. That's why I prefer phrases like open expectations. I know that you and I have been having conversations about the least harmful assumption. Mm-hmm. Is that where you're going with this conversation? Because I think that's another kind of interesting. I haven't done the reading on it, but I really would like to.
Yeah, I wasn't going there, but if you want to talk about it for a little bit, you can. But we can also save that for a different episode.
I think we should save that for a different episode. There's been some reading that I've been meaning to do about that because I think that's kind of an interesting pathway to take things. But I don't have the knowledge or the skill set at this point to discuss that with fidelity. So
here we are. And I don't really feel like I do either. So let's table that. But I think that would be a really good discussion for another episode. But kind of where I was going was you kind of touched on people use it as an out. And I think similar to that, sometimes people know just enough to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. And these are people that are really well-meaning, that love the kids that they work with, but don't have the like deep understanding and deep knowledge of disability or of how we have to work within systems to support disabled kids, because the systems that we have, they said Dr. Ray said at the end of the movie, disabilities don't hold kids back, schools do. And I would expand that to say like systems
Society does.
Society does. Mm-hmm. That kind of social model of disability plays a huge role. And we can talk more later about what the social model of disability is. But, so sometimes people know just enough to be dangerous and may assume that because they are trying to presume competence that even all disabled kids are a monolith. So like Melody has cerebral palsy. A lot of time with CP, intelligence and cognition are not affected. Language understanding is not affected, but it's a lot of motor complications. However, that's not even 100% true with cerebral palsy. A lot of people with cerebral palsy will have cognitive impacts, and a lot of people with different disabilities, not CP, could present very similarly, so kind of look the same as Melody on the outside, but actually have a completely different disability that does impact language processing, that impacts the ability to understand, the ability to learn, and that kind of thing. So when we say presume competence, you still have to treat people as individuals and go kind of on a case by case of, okay, what do I know about this person? What do I know their support needs to be so that I can, because I think they showed in the movie the IEP team being really reductive of Melody and kind of doing the opposite of what I'm saying here, of like, instead of assuming that every child needs a lower level of support, assuming that Melody, who has this capacity for typical, being in a typical class, they were assuming that she couldn't, or that she was limited in her cognition and in her learning just because of maybe the other students in her class or other students that they worked with in the past. So yeah, you really, I don't know. I have a tough time with that phrase.
I know that phrase was created in good faith, trying to prevent what happened to Melody's team, where they were like, no, she can't, no, she can't, no, she can't. And this was made in response to that, saying, what if, right? Which is an important mindset. I am so of the mindset that we have to care for one whole person. We cannot compare them to any other student on our caseload, any other experience that we've had. One person is one of one in the disabled experience. And to know where they're at on that spectrum is to know that child. And that's your responsibility as a professional, is to be able to gauge that and not make assumptions on either end, truly.
Yeah.
But to meet them where they're at and go from there. But never put a limit on the capacity that they can make. I would never look into my speech crystal ball and be like, they will never make these skills. I don't know that. There's no way for me to know that. However, my goal is to get you as far as you can. And I think that's an important difference between the presuming inability and presuming competence, is just to be there kind of in the middle, because it's not a problem on either side if they can or they can't. My goal is to meet you where you are and try to make your life a little bit easier through supporting your communication. So there's my soapbox on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Care for your whole person. That's my Jesuit education speaking, which is looking at them, their societal, where they're at in their lives, their family aspects, their, what's valuable to them as a person, and treat them accordingly. So anyways, that's all I got.
100%. And I think a lot of times I'll hear parents of kids with disabilities say, we were told he would never, we were told she would never, blah, blah, blah. And that, I think in some cases, is very true, because there are a lot of professionals that still hold to this very traditional mindset of disability just means that you'll never do a bunch of stuff. But I also think sometimes it is a message of like, here are common limitations that come with this disability or this diagnosis, and that kind of gets interpreted as a prognostic thing, or as like a sentencing of some kind, when in reality we don't know, and we're surprised all the time. Even if it's a diagnosis that we're really familiar with, have worked with for years, we're surprised all the time. So yeah, I've just learned to say, I don't know, here's what's common. That doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. It just means like, we have to see. We're going to have to see. So, all right. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Final thoughts are that disability is a big, nuanced conversation that people get PhDs and beyond for. This movie was an awesome introduction for people who do not have a ton of experience with the concept of disability to be introduced to. This was also a fabulous movie for individuals with disabilities to see themselves represented in media. Overall, loved the movie. Did make me cry. There you go.
Yeah, I think I cried 3 times watching this movie. Like, had like 3 tears. It is, it was really good. And I would, just second all of that. I think it did a really good job.
And now I'm going to read the book. So
yeah. All right. Well, this has been Tell Me About It. We are available on YouTube and Spotify at Tell Me About It and SLP podcast. And then we are also on Instagram at Tell Me About It SLP. So we hope that this kind of gave you some thoughts, feelings, maybe made you want to watch Out of My Mind a little bit. And we will see you here next time to talk more about something in the big wide world of disability and communication. All right.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.